tomorrow, which is a conference that is put on periodically by the Church Pension Fund. The Church Pension Fund provides all the care of clergy, and it's a very good pension fund. They care for us, and one of the ways they do is by having periodically these meetings where they talk about kind of the benefits and what happens and how you retire. They're always very kind to tell me on my statement exactly when I should retire, which is in 2032. Which is actually not that far away anymore. It was 20 years ago, a long time, but not so much now. And I will admit that I left that meeting with my head swimming with so much information, an incredible amount of information. And one of the things they did early on was show us the TV commercial, and you've seen it, where they're showing this is how much you saved, how long it will actually last you, and how long you expect to live, and actuarial tables and all of that. And I happened to the next day, unfortunately I was a day late apparently. I was reading forward in the lectionary to prepare for sermons, as I do, and the very next day I had this parable of the rich fool who says, I'm going to store up for myself in my retirement, and God says, you fool. One commentator I read this week calls this the parable of the barn guy. Stores up everything in a large barn. So I was trying in my reflection time to find some way between these planning for tomorrow, which is important to do. I think it would be irresponsible of me not to consider the things that I need to do in order to make sure that I can provide for myself and for my family, and how that we can have life insurance and other insurance and kind of all those things. How do I balance that against what Jesus is talking about in this parable? And I was thinking, the next Sunday is going to be great, because the next Sunday is the beautiful passage that is the lilies of the field, the birds of the air. And I went to next week. Do you know that section that we just read, that one that wasn't printed but I read to you, is not ever assigned in the lectionary? Not any Sunday. And many of you are looking at me the way I looked at my computer screen as I was on the lectionary page and went, what? And the woman, commentator said, it's not anywhere, and I went in the reverse lectionary, it's not. But how can we understand this parable without also having this beautiful passage of Jesus talking to his disciples? Because it really does give us a clue of what Jesus is talking about. Because I imagine you, like I, have thought about the years to come. And maybe you've thought, well, my mother and my grandmother or my great-grandmother all lived to be a ripe old age, and I should plan that far. Maybe you haven't thought about it at all. We just had a whole series about it in Lent, about planning for our future and how to care for our families. And that's the key. Jesus is telling this parable in response to a guy who comes up and says, Teacher, tell my brother to give me my half of the inheritance. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He's set his face forward, and people are starting to hear from him, and they decide he is a person of wisdom and a person of judgment, and if he says something, your brother has to do it. So Jesus says, who am I? And then he tells this parable. The parable of inheritance that nobody gets. That's the key to this parable. For example, in Vacation Bible School this year, we were listening to the story of Joseph. Joseph, the coat with long sleeves and many colors. Joseph, who was sold by his brothers into slavery, went into Egypt, is the one who interpreted Pharaoh's dream that there would be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, and they should store aside a fifth of food every year so that there would be enough
himself.
Who does Joseph store it up for?
Others.
Egypt. Ultimately, his own family. And that's the key what Jesus is getting at here. It's not that planning for tomorrow or setting aside what we need to care for others isn't important. It is when we start trusting in those things and thinking, okay, I've got all of this, and therefore life is good and nothing bad can happen to me. That's the prosperity gospel. And unfortunately, we know that bad things happen to good people. Jesus, when he's talking to his disciples, and he gives the example of the ravens and the grass of the field and the lilies, he is reminding them that there is more to life than stuff. And this guy doesn't think to himself, oh, I have more than will fit in my barn. Well, that's great. I'll give it to my kids, or I'll give it to the temple, or I'll help those in need. He goes, I'll build a bigger barn. It's not about how big your barn is. It's not about how much stuff you have. It does not make it inappropriate or any and somehow unchristian to plan for tomorrow the way we did at that conference. But it is unchristian to start thinking about it as yours. It is different when we start trusting in God and not our things. Many of you know one of my very favorite translations of the Bible, is a paraphrase really, is from Eugene Peterson, The Message. He does a modern day telling, and I'm just going to read to you the last bit of that passage from The Message, from this translation. People who don't know God and the way he works fuss over these things. But you know both God and how he works. Steep yourself in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. Don't be afraid of missing out. You're my dearest friends. The Father wants to give you the very kingdom itself. That's part of it right there. Don't be afraid of missing out. That's even an internet slogan, an internet phrase that's in a commercial right now, fear of missing out, FOMO, FOMO, fear of missing out. It is a